Hello there guys, this is CM Mangaka here, and today we're going to be doing another patch breakdown. This is going to be patch 5.7, which was just announced within the last hour or two. I read through the notes a couple of times. I just want to go through, give my own thoughts on it, see if we can interpret what these notes mean for the current competitive scene as it is, and perhaps some solo queue stuff. So without any further ado, let's get right on into it. So, boom. And just in case you want to have more contact with me, guys, my contact information on Twitter and YouTube is in the upper right-hand corner. Just in case that you're watching this from gopretend.com, or if you don't know what my Twitter is, just so you can come on in and join me for future work. So let's go ahead and pull the video down, and let's look for it in. So, Earth remain unchanged. Yay, I suppose. Bard is getting a lot of buffs. His base damage is being increased. His base armor is being increased. The cooldown on his little meeps, or chimes, has been decreased by like 2 seconds across the board. They restore more mana whenever he picks one up. And his Q has more damage, come around level 5 by 20. Is this going to be enough to make Bard good? I don't think so. I think Bard's kit has a huge problem when it comes to the fact that your laning isn't really too good. You have a harass spell, which is fine. It's also your one C spell. Then you have a heal in laning, which is pretty good, so there's some sustain. And then your magical journey is pretty much useless in the laning phase. If you want to use it, try and escape a gank, it's going to be really hard to use it like that just because the enemy team can follow you pretty much. And if you do use it to, like, you go into the jungle, then you want to gank through the lane, or gank into the lane, I should say, using Magical Journey, the enemy can see it coming, and there's time for them to disengage, or just prepare for it. And then when it comes to team fights, you really just do nothing. His ultimate, while it is cool, it doesn't do a whole lot. China has recently played with Bard in a competitive game, actually. I can't remember which teams played it. But Bard was effectively useless in that game. He just doesn't do anything compared to what the other sports are. Bard does not make plays. Bard tries to set up your team to make some plays, but then your team has to play around it. Whereas with a Thresh, okay, if you land a Death Sentence, then you can go on in, you can set up your box, you can do all sorts of things. You can do a lot of cool things on Thresh, for example. Or as Janna, you can immediately blow back the enemy team. There's things that you can do on the supports that Bard simply just cannot do. Maybe he'll get a little bit of a spike and an increase as far as win rate goes, but ultimately I think he's still going to be as useless and pointless as he is right now. Call me a Bard hater. You're allowed to do that. He has a 35% win rate in solo queue for a reason. And if you want to make the comparison to Yasuo, Yasuo would go on to become what was considered at the time as an OP champion, was able to go on and carry games. Players learned him. He got very few buffs, if I recall correctly, at the start of his kit. People learned to play him, people learned to build him, and he became really good. When Bard gets to that point, then you can make that comparison to Yasuo. I don't think Bard will ever get to that point, unless Riot does some big things. One of the changes I would personally think that Bard needs, with terms of his magical journey, is that it only works for your team. Because the thing is, the situations in which we see it used, the enemy team can just follow it pretty much. It gives, like, when everybody has the ability to go through walls and has that mobility, nobody has mobility. It's kind of like if everybody runs fast, nobody's fast, because fast is a relative term. Fast is, you have to have slow to have fast. So if everybody can go through a wall, nobody has improved mobility. I think that if Bard has that change to his E, it would make it overpowered. It would, because there's no counterplay to just, all right, well, we came on in here, and now we're just all going to run away. Everybody can bail out. But that makes the spell actually good, and it doesn't just change the location of it or require a whole lot of thought behind it. So that's one change I'm not saying I would like to see, but one like that I have a theory craft. Like, I have to go and make something that broken on Bard to make him just good. So there's that. There's my thoughts. Blitzcrank nerf. It's there. I mean, we don't see him a lot in competitive play. This probably will hurt him in terms of solo queue, just because, like, especially in the laning phase. So this in the laning phase is really annoying, having this 8 seconds of movement speed, because then it just, you can chase them forever, doesn't come up there. Having this where it's a burst of speed and it decays pretty rapidly means there's less of this abuse case when you activate W. So you have to be really selective with the W. So there's a bit more counterplay to it. And then when this comes into effect, when he gets slow, this is just Blitzcrank being slow. I thought this was like an AoE slow, but it's just Blitzcrank being slowed. Then this opens up a lot of like counter engage potential, a lot of counter harass. So ultimately, this is a pretty hefty nerf to Blitzcrank. Excuse me, overall. Oh, Darius. Hello, my old friend. Again, not really a whole lot of implication to the competitive scene, But this is going to kind of help him out when it comes to like skirmishes, just like being able to cast more spells when he's using it. And then this is going to be a huge buff to his late game. Like having your ultimate just reset when you get a kill. That's a huge buff to all the dunkings when it comes to the team fight. So he'll perform better in solo. Little bit of a damage increase on Evelyn. Not much there. Here's a big change for us, Fizz. So they're once again swapping the passives and the active on it again. So passively, when Fizz has its ability, it's going to do missing % health damage to the enemy. And it's going to be scaling with ability power. So, and then the active is going to be just flat damage. So before, it was the flat damage burn over time. And the active was the % health shred. Okay? So basically what this change does to Fizz, okay, is that the playstyle before is that, okay, so passively you're just getting like this little extra burn to it, but then when you get this active, you have like this huge health shred that's coming onto it, okay? When you have that going on and you build Fizz with a Blade of the Rune King or when you build AD, that gives you so much burst because you're going to have like upfront max health burst damage, and then as the damage goes down, you activate your W, and then you get like continued burst with it because then you're operating on missing health rather than current % health damage, even though the current still health is in there. So this changed Fizz's play pattern to favor him to build AD, go tanky, get a Triforce, get a Blade of the Rune King, and then go like Frozen Heart. What this does then is that it rewards Fizz for building more AP because now he has this relatively respectable AP ratio, all the time active, and the % missing health burn. So now there's not this window of time that Fizz has where, you know, he's going to be just like needs to use that active to chunk you out, and he has a burn to it, okay? And then you have the active where it just adds more AP damage. So while this could just see like maybe perhaps AD Fizz as we see him now just become even stronger just because he constantly has this passive up and therefore not needing to go in when the W is in, most likely this is also going to encourage more AP Fizz play because now you have like extra damage. It's not this extra burn damage over time, it's extra flat damage. So we'll see whether or not Fizz will make the transition to being an AP focused champion again, or if he'll continue to be this AD building champion that's even more powerful. Garen ult mana, not mana, Garen ult mana. Yeah, it costs 0 now, guys. Cooldown reduction, a whole 60 seconds, actually 40, excuse me. That's pretty substantial. Helps him in the laning phase. Hecarim, this is a fairly big one for competitive late because we see a lot of Hecarim in competitive. So he's losing about 2.26 base health regen and one whole mana regen. Thing is, with Hecarim, as he's built right now, he usually starts Flask, and he also has his W to self-heal. So he has a lot of sustain when it comes to lane. So this is going to just ultimately reduce that, make him a little easier to harass out of lane, not make him so just hard to push out. Here's a big one. Kassadin R lockout rate. So how Kassadin's ultimate works is that you stack it up every time you use it, okay? It's on a really low cooldown, but the thing is with each stack that you have, it gives you an increase in damage and it doubles the mana cost that you have that it costs to use the ultimate. However, those stacks have a drop-off rate. It takes, as it is now, it takes 20 seconds for those to drop off, okay? So if you're like early on in the game, okay, you want to wait and like begin to stack your ultimate through a fight, or you want to like roam out a little more, and you want to wait for that cooldown reset so you're not just consuming all your mana to just walk over the place, you have to wait 20 seconds. Now you have to wait 5 seconds less, which means that Kassadin is going to have a lot more breathing room when it comes to letting his passive, or not the passive, the stacks on his ultimate die down. Let those refresh, give him a little more longevity in terms of his mobility to move around the map a little more without it costing so much mana. This is going to help him out a little bit. So this is right, trying to give Kassadin a little love after shooting off his kneecaps. Maokai's passive nerfs. So he does really well in sustain. He's probably one of the, or I should say the strongest top laner you could pick in competitive play. That's the keyword, competitive. Because he has a great sustain, he's got really good poke, and his engages are so good. So them nerfing his passive a little bit in the early game means that he's not going to be healing as much. It's a slight nerf, but it could be enough to make him a little less safe. You have to look at how much he's actually losing from it. So then there's Morgana. She's just getting a bit of a visual and sound effects update in terms of her spells, a little more readability. Looks pretty cool. You can check it out. Nidalee's being nerfed, losing some health and losing health per level. This is namely a jungle balance. This is going to definitely hurt her laning a bit. I don't think jungle Nidalee Wright says she's a little dominating, but I haven't seen too much of her in competitive play. I think everyone's settling in on like the tanks right now, so we'll see how this goes. I don't know how much of a problem she is in solo queue. Probably still is really good, especially if you just snowball early and crush the tanks before they can get there. Quinn and Teemo, I'll link these together. Both get some buffs to their blind. So reading this is a little complicated. It took me a couple of times to finally figure it out. But what this basically is, whenever you blind somebody, uh, even I have the reading again just to make sure. So how blind works right now is that when you declare an attack, okay, if you're blinded as you say I'm attacking this thing, as you click something, your character's in range and they're saying I'm attacking now. What that does then is that if blind is active on you right there, and as you throw the projectile, it goes off of you right then, you're still blinded, okay? So what this does then is that this is actually a pretty big nerf, excuse me. So now there's like, if you throw out your projectile and when that projectile is launched and you can't take it back, blind has to wear off at that specific point in order for the blind to apply or not to apply anymore, excuse me. So whereas before, if you got the attack, if you were blinded as you were declaring the attack and it wore off, you were still blinded. Whereas now, if you're attacking and the projectile is out, or the animation when your melee is being completed and the blind wears off, or the blind is still in effect at that point, then it doesn't. So there's less of a duration on blind is what this effectively means. So a bit of a Quinn nerf, bit of a Teemo nerf. So excuse me for calling it a buff. Rek'Sai. Cinder Hulk OP, better nerf Rek'Sai. Okay. She's losing some bonus attack damage into Q. Yeah, but this is a nice thing. They're giving her more utility. So now, you level up your E, which I think people do second, just so you get more tunnels out. Now you have the cooldown on when you can reuse a tunnel is decreased, and so this gives her a lot more mobility in the late game. So this is fairly nice. I like this. So bit of a rebalancing. Shen. So with the meta being as tank heavy as it is, these buffs to Shen might be enough to warrant him coming back a little bit. If the tank meta persists, and with teleport being a thing. So early game, not too much. Late game, that's a whole 40 seconds off the cooldown. That's a lot of utility from him. So with this buff, it is possible that we could see Shen make some appearances within this current tanky meta. Like, he does pretty okay. He gives a lot of pressure. He has a second TP on him, essentially, which is just great for teams to have, because then you can just ult down into the bottom lane. No, thank you. He could ult down into the bottom lane, and then just teleport right back to top lane, not miss a thing. Thing is, we have to see how well his laning goes. I think the matchups for him aren't so good for him right now. I don't think he fares too well in a lane swap scenario, though he does have sustain and his Q to work in it. So it is a possibility. Not calling it for sure, but this is definitely going to be a big help to him. We could see more Shins. Watch out for that. They're changing Singe jungle a little bit. They produced a whole % damage fling to it. It's being applied correctly to monsters. Teemo blind, just like Quinn's. Tristana. So Tristana is in a weird place right now where she's more of a mid-game scaling, or spiking ADC, I should say, because she doesn't scale as hard in the late game given the nerfs to her attack speed and her range. But with this now, there's this cool new interaction between her E and her Q. Now, they did increase the cooldown on her E in the mid game. So as you max it out, you have 2 longer seconds. But when you attack a target while rapid fire is active, you reduce the cooldown of explosive charge by 0.5 seconds. Okay, I thought it was rapid fire's cooldown gets decreased. So basically, they're compensating for this little nerf to the E by making so that, okay, we want you to use E and then Q to harass this target to detonate as fast as you can. And then that is going to mean you're going to get your E up more often. So it's not too big of a buff, because when you think about it, this is like on a 17-second cooldown. This is on like a 14-second cooldown. So you're going to get like probably 1 proc of this off every time you throw this out if you wait on it. And the maximum you can get off of this is like 5. So that's like 2.5 seconds. So ultimately, this is a nerf to Tristana. That's not going to help her a whole lot. So Cinder Hulk. So this one on items. Cinder Hulk is at a point where it's kind of drifting towards becoming like the Black Cleaver of Season 5 in the sense that you should just build it on every jungler that you play as, whereas Black Cleaver is every AD champion you play as because it's that good. So Riot's first attempts at trying to chink at this guy is to take off 50 health and increase the cost by 50 gold. Um, I don't think this is enough, frankly. Um, sure, yeah, I agree with nerfing some of the free tank stats that it gets because when you think about it, getting rid of 50 health also gets rid of the 25% bonus health that you get off of it. So 25, so a fourth of 50, it doesn't scale too well. Around an extra 10 health, it's not that much, on all honesty. But nerfing that and increasing the gold cost by 50, while it will do a little bit of something and perhaps make a difference in the early game, it's not going to be enough to really like stop the problems of Cinder Hulk. I personally think that perhaps some of the damage could be tuned back, maybe not in terms of clear, although that could be addressed a little bit, and champions as well. I don't know what the problem with Cinder Hulk exactly is. That is one thing where I have to admit whether or not it's like the clear speed coming from the passive, how tanky everybody gets, so like maybe the scaling needs to be reduced. I agree. I like that Riot is saying, okay, Cinder Hulk needs a little bit of a nerf, and then is trying to identify where else it could use some trimming to see what happens if these come in. So they're looking to do that. So hopefully, maybe next patch, if Cinder Hulk proves to be as strong as it is, they can scale back just a bit more, just so that we really get diversity going on in jungle meta right now. Because it seems when all these tank junglers are consistently beating out the old bruisers that everybody hated because you could only play bruisers, we're not having diversity. We're having the same problem, just reversed. So that needs to be dealt with, so that there will be these even games. And so that it's possible for bruisers to keep up with tanks past the 25-minute mark, because that's the meta that we're currently in right now. There's a lot of examples of games where the games just get to scale on, and if you don't win the game within 25 minutes as a team, which is pretty hard to do right now, unless you're a really dominant team, then it's pretty hard. Tiamat change, damage scales linearly, so bit of a change to it. If you're farther away from it, you take less damage. Not sure how much that's going to affect things. Now, this is a really big buff. So given how subtle the Cinder Hulk nerf was, nerfing Toadstool this drastically makes it okay to nerf Cinder Hulk as minorly as they did. Okay, so this is huge. The damage has been cut in half with Gromp. So this means, like, for examples of like some abuse cases, like Soul Lane Shyvana with Smite with the Red Skirmisher Saber being an abuse case with this thing. Okay, that is the damage that you have from that is nerfed by half. Jungle damage is also being nerfed by half whenever you prioritize getting a Gromp. So if the synergy between Cinder Hulk scaling health and then this new Gromp buff on it was like one of the big issues with the tank and a huge source of their damage, then this is great. This is going to address that. If Cinder Hulk has some other problems, then hey, then we can go address those. So this is a very substantial nerf. Like, for example, I'll give it to you like this. Okay, if you pick up Cinder Hulk and that's your only bonus health at this point, okay, in the game, instead of having 35 damage, because this is 10% of your bonus health, 10 or 350 divided by 10, okay, 35. Instead of having that much damage just coming off this passive when people attack you, now it's down to with the Cinder Hulk nerf as well, I might as well add, is now down to 15 damage. That's like half the damage gone in the early game, and that's only going to scale worse. So that's a very substantial nerf to the tanks, and I'm okay with that. I think that jungle tanks need to be brought back in line just a little bit, just so that we can still see them play. They'll still do their job, but they're not completely outclassing everybody else. That's the point that we're looking for, because diversity means you can play anything and win with anything. Diversity is not, we're in this shift right now where all this new stuff's coming up and this new stuff is winning, but then everybody's just going to play the new stuff and then we have no diversity. That's the difference. So, couple other little artistic things, skins. It's a fairly light patch with a few implications. Not a whole lot to talk about, but overall, Riot seems to be aware that there is a little too much domination when it comes to the jungle tank meta right now, and I'm glad they're looking at a couple things to scale it back for. A couple other things of note, bit of a Hecarim nerf, so maybe it won't be as effective when it comes to standing in lane. Blitzcrank, pretty majorly buff, and maybe we'll see Fizz return to an AP roots, and perhaps we could see some Shen play. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this patch. So thank you guys for watching this. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something from it. If you have your own thoughts, your own opinions, or perhaps some insights that I missed out on, please let me know. Until then, this is Cedar Mangaka, signing out.